So tonight, I want to look at volunteers and attracting volunteers. That doesn't necessarily mean members, but if we attract volunteers, there's a chance, well, you never know what could happen with that. I want to do something much like we did last week, and we're looking at volunteers. I want to show you a video clip to begin. But I'm going to turn things around a little bit here and ask you a couple of questions. This is the video clip's not directly about Rotary, but as you're watching it, think about how the principles of what's being said could apply to Rotary or should apply to Rotary. And afterwards, I'm going to put you in breakout rooms, and so the questions are going to be around, what's your 1-minute Rotary story? And I'll be asking for some feedback. And as you watch it, what skills are you going to build for people that join Rotary? And ask you to identify what would be the free food, and I know it might not be food, what would be the free food or the free things you would give people who might come along? So I'm going to share my screen and see if we can make this work.
My name's Michaela Connery, and I am the founder and executive director of Unified Feeder. We work with teens with and without disabilities to give all kids their moment in the spotlight. One is to first know what you need volunteers to do. So a lot of people say, I need volunteers, but how many hours do you need volunteers? What skills do you need them to have? Where do you need them to be? Do they need to have a car? Do they need to be a certain age? Once you know what kind of volunteers you need and what you need them to do, then you have to go out and start recruiting them. And it's important to know the kind of volunteers you're looking at and cater your recruitment accordingly. It's also important when you're recruiting a volunteer to tell a story. So to say, you're going to make a difference this way, or join us in the movement to change this, so that you're not just saying we need you to work 12 hours a week for 8 weeks doing boring things. So the biggest thing that you can do for volunteers is give them swag. I've found that if you give food and swag, you are totally set with your volunteers. So having an information session that involves pizza or candy or ice cream or something, and telling them if you come, you get a free t-shirt, a free bag, free Sharpie markers, whatever it is. I am under the belief that however people get through the door doesn't really matter. So if they came through the door only because they were in it for the free food, that's fine, because the reason they'll stay and because the reason they'll actually continue to be a good volunteer is because they care about the work you're doing. And also in the incentives that you offer, so for your Unified Feeder, we found that kids getting community service hours is kind of a done deal now. It's almost an expectation to have community service hours. So offering like you're going to get so many hours doesn't always have the same weight as it may have had a few years ago, but offering certain opportunities for skill building, whether it's, we're going to teach you how to write a grant, we're going to teach you how to manage a group, we're going to help you do presentations and public speaking that you've never done before. We're going to build these skills for your resume, and then we're going to write you a recommendation on top of it. Giving those kind of incentives deepens sweetens the pot for your volunteers. I think a really important strategy for volunteer management is to help your volunteers understand the impact that they're making. For example, to put back to your student leaders to say, for 62% of your participants, this was the first time they participated in an inclusive activity. This is the first time they either worked with a student with a disability or worked with a student without. And that's a big deal, and you, student leader, made that happen. Thank you so much. That was awesome. We also try to thank our volunteers as often and as publicly as possible. And publicly doesn't necessarily mean at a big dinner or at a big public event. It could mean posting about them on your blog. We do Facebook shout-outs, Twitter shout-outs. We recognize kids in newsletters, on emails. Any opportunity you have to thank a volunteer and then thank them publicly will really make them feel more engaged and more connected to your organization.
So, and it's not directly Rotary, but I think there's a lot of relevance in there for what we do. So I'm going to put people into groups. I'm going to let this run for probably about just over 15 minutes, maybe nearer 20. So in the groups, if group one could think about what skills are you going to build in people? And in room one, Sandy from Turriff's in there. So if you're in that group, you know where you are. If group two could think about what food are you going to give people? How are you going to entice people in? And even if they just leave after, and it might not be food, could be that. So that's Alistair Walker, you're in room two. If room three could think about what's your 1 minute Rotary story, and Celia, you're in room three. So, and if room four could think about what skills are you going to build as well. So, and Charlotte, you're in room four. So if you could get that, and if we could get a key message back from each of the groups in somewhere around 20 minutes or so. And I'll just pop around the breakout rooms as we're going. I'll just make sure we've got everybody in a room. Oh, there's a breakout room 5 hadn't covered. So Gary and Eleanor, you're in breakout room 5, and you pick any one of the topics that we've talked about that you want and give us that. So I'm going to open the rooms right now. And you've now got an opportunity, it should say join whichever breakout room.
I would think one of the others would be better.
Ken, can we just confirm that there was 2 topics called skills?
There was just one topic. What skills are you going to build in people?
Uh-huh.
I may have phrased it slightly differently between the first and second time I said it.
Ah, okay.
Need 2 skills, Ken. Double vision.
So the first skills were skills that we were going to provide, is that right? Or the skills you're looking for?
It's what skills would we develop in people?
Uh-huh.
So if you're thinking of, it really doesn't matter what age group. Some people want to volunteer, but they also want development, and some want mentoring, and some want whatever.
Okay. John was just saying there that I think he was suggesting that the 1 minute Rotary is something that most people probably have, and it's not something we've really developed out of discussion. So suggesting we went for one of the others. So it's either skills, food, or skills.
Skills.
Okay.
So what's everyone's thoughts then on that basis?
Robin Wardhall.
Yeah, Robin.
Could I say that what communications is an important one.
In terms of skills.
Sorry?
In terms of skills.
Oh, I see what you mean. In terms of developing skills, Robin, is that what you're saying? Developing, communicating.
But I think the important thing is communication is very important with people to get. Once we've got communication with people, then you can develop the skills, see what skills they've got, and take it from there.
Okay.
I see you mean, yes.
Skills is one of my pet subjects that I've had many years, because we know each other by classification, which is really a waste of time. I mean, my classification is meteorology. So what use am I to Rotary? And Gary and Eleanor, you don't have to answer that, by the way.
We've been in a room together, John. Yes.
Whereas I have skills from being a meteorologist. And I think that's where the basic line, we don't investigate people's skills enough at the beginning. We don't, I mean, I don't know the skills of most of my Rotary Club members. I've got a rough idea, but I don't know about the skills that they've actually got from their employee. And sometimes when you got a solicitor, you think, he or she's in law. When you've got a banker, you've got he or she can be an accountant. There are other skills. So I think it's more about finding out what skills can be of use to the club, not necessarily actually training people and developing their skills.
Was there not something a few years ago where the skills database was going to be set up and that then got skewered by GDPR? Am I remembering that rightly?
I don't think so. I mean, the RI database has a field that you can populate with skills. And there are some districts in the UK, and probably some clubs as well, by default, who've actually developed a skills database. So you might go to district 10 something or other, and that district will have a complete skills database. I mean, the example I would give about lack of knowledge is when I was on the RIBI executive, we produced a marketing plan. You might remember it had a funny blue and yellow tie came out of it.
Yeah.
We didn't know who we could use to help us as the RIBI executive. We didn't know who we could use to help us with developing a marketing plan. We certainly found them when we produced a marketing plan, and they all came out and criticized it. So we found them by default. But it's a pity we had to find them by default.
Can I ask if any of the rest of the folk in this breakout room have done something in your club to identify people's skills? Because I think that's quite an important thing, and that's what we tried to start to do when we set up this new club. Have any of the rest of you considered that, or do you actually have that? You know, what kind of skills your members have got, apart from saying you're a meteorologist? You really are actually very good at IT or something like that.
We haven't, I'm from Shetland, we haven't developed any sort of database, but we're a small club. So you know that the skill set that people have got from the responses that they make to proposals and so on, or indeed their employment.
Yes.
The guy who works for the local computer shop, pretty obvious.
Yeah, and that the whole reason that they're following you is because they look up to, they like what you're doing, they follow it. So if you outline what you're looking for on social media, the people that are interested will put their names forward. And obviously you've got to put out what benefits they get from it. So whether it could be skills, qualifications, just getting to help in their community, if you have all that in the post and they're taking the time out of their day to contact you or ask about it, it means that they're obviously interested in what you're doing, and they would help. And obviously you've got to find your volunteers as well, so you need to take advantage of the local schools, colleges, businesses and stuff, because they are the people that when you go to these places and do a talk, and if they're not interested, they just didn't get back to you. But if somebody goes out their way to be in contact, then they want to be involved. And you've got to make it, I think we're talking about making, like, getting them to be members. I think you've got to make it clear that there's no pressure to be a member, because that turns people off. You've got, hopefully they will be a member, but that's because you've not put them under pressure. Just they should be able to come and help their local Rotary Club and get involved in the community without feeling the pressure of joining, because they might work a lot of hours. They might feel like they've got the time to volunteer, but they didn't have the time to be a fully committed member, and they might feel bad or guilty about that. So as long as we communicate with them that that's not important and that's not what it's about, then you're more likely to get them in. And you've got to make sure that you recognise that they're doing this. Like, you've got to make sure that you are thankful for what they do, and they're likely to come back and help you. But definitely putting on your social, the one that I would stick with would be putting it on your social media, what you're needing, what you're looking for, and what they'll get out of it. And if they come back and tell you they want to do it, then they're obviously interested in what you've posted.
I agree. It's like if you hire somebody for a job, you've got to have an idea of what person you want to hire for the job before you just say, open the doors and say, right, anybody can apply. You've got to have some kind of a spec, for want of a better way to describe it.
Yeah, and then likewise, if they then apply for that job, they obviously have an interest in that. role or
exactly.
position.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's exactly what they want. It's like, say, the analogy I would make is a bit like hiring somebody for a job. You don't just, don't go out and hire anybody willy-nilly. You've got to have a clear idea, because otherwise, as I said earlier on, it's no good for them and it's no good for you.
I love what you're saying about social media, Alana. We set up our WhatsApp group yesterday.
Okay.
So absolutely superb. I got the whole thing set up under B&K Rotary, and we've already got, so far since yesterday afternoon, already 7 of us are conversing.
Yeah, it's definitely a good way to contact people.
Yeah, it's it doesn't fit well with a lot of older people who don't carry devices with them all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, I carry my device with me all the time. I'm never without it. One is for work purposes, but it's just instant. So as we develop, I think social media, absolutely.
They won't volunteer.
Absolutely. And I think the flip side is what would you do to put off volunteers? You would charge them to join the institution. You'd tell them there was a meal. You'd tell them there were speakers that were irrelevant to what they were going to volunteer for. And I think gradually we're beginning to understand that those things are barriers to volunteering, but they're not building skills directly.
Yes, yes.
I was going to say, I think that Philip has got my crib sheet.
I'm on the same page.
Because I think that's, I'll not do my rant tonight, but I think sometimes it's not even about enhancing skills. It's about people wanting to be part of, dare I say, something. And they don't actually know yet what they want to be part of. And there's maybe a step before the skill step, which is getting them involved, getting them part of it. And it may be, there's the difference between, for example, these are not similar, but for example, there's a difference between, let's say, litter picking, which is useful in society and which most of us could do with very little training, to applying, say, for a Rotary Foundation grant, which requires knowledge, understanding, and a bit of hard work. So that part of it is that let's not leap in and enhance skills immediately. Let's get let's get people involved by giving them, not giving them, but inviting them to do pretty basic stuff.
Yeah.
Well, that could be the same as sort of adding experience. Now, I don't know what our schools do. The theatre video talked about getting community service hours for the high school kids, and I don't know whether our schools do that, but working with the Interact or clubs or something to say you can get some hours by coming and volunteering, just manning the gate with somebody, or helping put out tables or do leafleting or something. So skills in that sense could be giving them experience.
Yeah, yeah. Anyone like to add to that?
Nowhere. So I think that's maybe an idea that we can capitalize on that. We can say to them, and that's what we intend to do is, well, how would you like to come along and help us as a volunteer? And as I said before, we might not get everybody, but we might get 1 or 2, which is 1 or 2 more than we had before. And we, as a club, we've worked in the past with volunteers with hospital radio, and it's proved very lucrative. It just so happens I'm the secretary of it, but we're able to use the broadcasting and to get things out on air, which is great. And we've helped them out. So, it's a two-way process. So we'll just see what happens.
Can I ask Elaine, would it then follow that as well as staying in contact with people that have been helping you through lockdown, you also are going to stay in contact with the organisations you've been helping? Because presumably what brought them in was the practical need, if there was a need to support a food bank.
I think they formed a group of volunteers to help. I think that group that volunteered was actually formed for lockdown, They didn't
Okay.
come from other organisations.
I think there's merit in looking at companies and talking to them and saying what would they like to do, as Sheena said earlier, in terms of their social responsibility. And we just act as a volunteer, helping them do the thing that they want to do. There is nothing, it should not be a one-way system, it should be a two-way system. Thank you.
What I thought you did, you said you completely changed that outlook by me seeing you here tonight, running this quiz, showing interest in the kids and being part of what was going on.
Thank you for that, David. Can I just say that, in my opinion, working with kids is the way that we will change our image more in every community that we exist in.
And new members.
Well, let's put it this way, they're probably going to be here more tomorrow than people like me and others are.
Absolutely.
So that's the future. They are our future.
Yes.
Ken's helped me banging on about it far too often.
Or if not, we go the way of the dinosaurs and we all just go to the graveyard together. Oh, that's what happened. If you want that model of evolution, it's tried and tested.
Yeah.
Well, Ken, I think we're all wrapped up and ready to go.
Right. Well done, you. Good.
Ken, we can't hear you.
Can't hear you.
Can't hear you, Ken.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Others will need about 5 more minutes. I'm just broadcasting out a 5-minute notice for people. So I'll let you get on.
We can put the kettle on and have a cup of tea while we're waiting.
Get the gin out.
Enjoy some fellowship. That's what we can do.
Yeah.
You're right about the kids though, because we started a meal project. It was called the MAC project. It's moving and cooking, and it was great to see those kids who hadn't a clue how to make a plate of soup, something simple, or a pizza, and they enjoyed themselves doing that. Then they had their bit of sport activity as well. We did that in one of the local schools. We got involved with the local PSYV, which is Police Scotland Young Volunteers. This are absolutely great because they've helped out at all sorts of events, not just the Rotary events, but they've helped out other events as well, and stewarding and stuff like that. And it's great to see the response from those kids. And of course, they've interacted really, really well this year as well.
Hillary, apologies. I pressed the wrong button.
It's me.
Apologies to the folk in my group. I pressed the wrong button and abandoned you, but thank you very much.
It's all right, Charlotte. We just spoke about you. Don't worry.
That's okay. My ears are ringing.
It was all good. It was all good.
Well, there's lots of conversation going on in there. Let's get one key message back from each group. So room 1, Sandy, who's giving feedback from your room? And everybody's on mute, so you'll need to unmute yourself.
I'll jump in from my group. We had a very, very interesting and very good conversation, good participation. We recognise that there are skills to be transferred, but we also recognise that having projects, we would like to recruit people with the skills for that project. We said at the very end of our chat that we've never ever had a volunteer that we couldn't find something for them to do. There's always something for them to do. But perhaps getting a popular project which people would want to be involved with would help. That gets people on board. We've all agreed that there are skills that can be transferred to volunteers, like soft skills, like people skills, communication skills, motivation skills, give them confidence. And there was a great story of a lad that's been taken under the wing by the Rotary and he's got fantastic confidence from it. Teamwork, working as part of a team, perhaps they don't do that. But we're also keen that we don't put pressure on our volunteers that you must join the Rotary from the outset. We'll get the volunteers on board, get them working with us and helping us, and we can build on everything else from there.
Great. Absolutely right. We just don't understand what everybody really wants out of this. And if you have a project, you can attract them in and you can develop people from that. Excellent. Room 2, Alistair Walker's room. Who's feeding back for your group, Alistair?
In our room, we felt that volunteers fall into 3 categories. Those that are happy to join Rotary, those that want to be friends of Rotary, and those that are not really interested in Rotary but want to volunteer. And that we have to capitalise on that. It's not necessarily about getting people to join Rotary, but getting people to help. The other thing we felt is that there are lots of avenues to explore for getting volunteers, such as approaching companies and local groups and youth groups and asking them for volunteers. But as Elaine put it, an important part of that is offering to help them when they need it. Instead of saying we need volunteers, also saying, can we volunteer to help you? And through that, we can build connections with people, not necessarily as Rotarians, but as volunteers to help. Any other anything to add from my group? No.
You're absolutely right. And understanding what the community really wants, or sorry, needs, and actually helping them is a double-edged sword that will help us as well as the community that we work in.
That's right. Also, the feeling was that, you know, some people might like to do one thing but not another. It's tailoring what you involve them in to what they want to do, whether they want to work with young people or they want to work in whatever field. So it's knowing your volunteers and knowing what they want to do and encouraging them to come along and help you.
And even Rotarians as well. I had a phone call from one Rotarian whose skills weren't being used. And it wasn't a teacher, but if we use a teacher's analogy, teachers might not want to work with youth. They might want something completely different, for example, to do in Rotary. Big nod of the head there from an ex-teacher. There we go. And room 3, Celia's room. Who's feeding back for you, Celia?
I think you delegated me, Ken. So what we looked at is the Rotary story, more as an elevator pitch. If we met somebody in the street, what would we tell them about us? Why are we part of Rotary? And we went through everybody, and various themes kept coming out. The majority were the volunteering with young people, seeing them growing up, seeing them what we can do in the community, and they will obviously be our future, was the most rewarding thing. Friendship, membership, telling people, yes, we are all friends, we joined and we are part of a group. We've got a part of a group across the world that we can go whenever we want. It was also seeing the benefits in the communities as well as overseas, the actual actions we're doing and seeing what the outcomes are. Volunteering, supporting, giving to good causes. So we can do something with next to nothing and telling people that the volunteering helps. And it's not all to do with donating, it's quite often to do with you've got next to nothing and doing something of it. And as a volunteer, you're not alone, you're one in a million, as it was said. So you're doing things together, and although you're not creating the dependency. What came out is also the reawakening of the communities over the last time is helping Rotary, that we are participating and coming more together again. But again, the main thing, fellowship and helping others, telling people, come and join us for that, because you'll be part of a group. You'll be part of what does Rotary stand for? I mean, Ray said he just loves Rotary for what it stands for and all the background, and that's a positive thing that comes over. Giving regular times to service, not necessarily the charity thing, not necessarily raising money, but actually giving time, being in tune with the community and networking with other organisations. Then we did a quick one, what Rotary is not. So if anybody asks us what's Rotary not, we need to change the image. We're not all old fuddy-duddy men having lunch. You know, things are changing, but the image needs to help. And so there was various examples of that. People, for example, in the primary school quiz, the master came and said, "Oh, I didn't realise what you do." Things like that that we need to get across.
Yep, thank you very much. And you're right, you know, like the primary school quiz. Do we actually put up a leaflet or send out a leaflet or put up something around the primary school quiz that tells the mums and dads that everything we do, and it's actually Rotary, it's organising this. The opportunities are endless. Group 4, I don't know if Charlotte's going to be allowed to speak for this group since she abandoned them halfway through, but who's speaking for your group, Charlotte?
I think I better have to make my apologies actually for my faux pas. I think the one thing that came out was that this is a very diverse organisation, and so the skills that we can offer to develop, or the skills that we can be developed within the group, are very wide-ranging, from being simplistic, from the basic to really the very complicated when it comes to things, as I think Kath, you mentioned, applying for grants or whatever, particular skills. One thing that clearly came out in the discussion too was that we must be careful not to offer people something and then not deliver on what we're offering, you know, saying, yes, you can come and join us and we'll develop all these skills, and then there isn't an opportunity for us to do that. And that really we have, there's a flip side to it as well, that we offer to develop skills, but it's also getting from people that the skills that they can offer us and make them feel involved, because sometimes new members don't like to push themselves forward and say they can do X, Y, and Z, because somebody already has been doing that in the past, and that's often a difficult issue, you know,
Sure.
for people to handle. You know, I've always done it that, or we've always done it that way, and that's always a thorny thing to situation to handle.
Yeah,
you know?
very much. And yeah, as I say to people quite often is, when we ask some of our newer Rotarians to do something, and it's not the way you would do it, it doesn't make it wrong, it's just different.
Absolutely,
You know?
absolutely. And it's also giving those who are coming in either as just as volunteers or simply as volunteers or as new members, the opportunity to get to know these people there. They've told people about themselves, but they don't know very much about the people who are round about them either, you know. And so it's that kind of exchange and sharing opportunities as well. I hope that summed up from our group some of what we said.
I can't believe you get through all this in 20 minutes. It's amazing what we can do. Group 5, I don't know if it's Gary or Eleanor or somebody else in that group who's going to give us some of the key points in there.
I've just been poked, so I suppose I better say something. And I don't think it was John that poked me, so I'll carry on. We had a bit of a benefit of being able to discover whichever topic we wanted, because you gave us a free-flowing. So we had a bit of a debate around the skills area, both from what we need versus what we give. And there was a bit of a debate around both sides of that particular coin. I mean, we did kick off a bit of discussion about the old club job talk, which of course we're all very familiar with, but the point was that it doesn't necessarily guarantee that in actual fact that gives you an idea of what people's abilities are, or indeed has already been mentioned in this feedback session, what people's wishes are. And there's a good example from Shetland where there's a guy who works computer shop, doesn't actually do a great deal of computer stuff within the club because other people are building these skills, and that's a good example of letting the guy do something different. John highlights the fact that if we are interested in people's skills, there is in actual fact a skills database within the RI system that can be utilised. And I do remember some time ago as a district there was talk of us taking something like this on board, but it never took off. But a couple of areas of examples were given. One going back to Shetland again was they have a community award process whereby lots of various groups put themselves forward as examples of good practice, and from that they actually give awards, they have a civic reception, and from that they can actually identify the skills which are available within the community which can be worked in conjunction with the club. And Forfar very similarly, they've got a project around Christmas time where lots of other community organisations are getting on board, and the net effect of that in actual fact is actually volunteers that are actually coming to them rather than having to seek volunteers externally.
Okay, that's great, thank you.
Anything else I missed that you want to add?
I'm going to open up the chat, not the chat, but the questions and answers. If people want to just raise any questions or make any points we've not covered, if you click on participants and say raise your hand, I'll get to see. We're currently sitting at 35 on, so I can only see about 20 or so. So is anybody wanting to add anything onto it? So John Milne, come on, John.
Just a thought, Ken, that's come out of listening to what people were saying beforehand and in the group. A lot of what we've talked about since we had the district assembly and through various assembly meetings and in the forum meetings is collaboration between clubs. And I wonder to what extent in an area we could develop a volunteer pool that would be available to Rotary in that area. So the emphasis on Rotary in the community rather than you're only becoming attached to the Rotary Club of wherever. And I don't think the logistics of working that out would be unachievable, but that's just my thinking.
So how could that be extended? And I know there's discussions being talked about across Rotary about having, let's say, a hub for ourselves, a hub for District 1010, where we could ask people like that to join and volunteer, for example. But so Fiona, I don't know if it's Fiona or Alistair, but it's one of that pair.
It's muted.
But they'll unmute themselves.
Right, I'm unmuted. John's point was a very good one about collaboration between clubs. I wouldn't restrict that to between Rotary clubs. In Sutherland, we're the only club in an area that's the size of most countries. So collaboration is a little difficult with the nearest one. Although Tane and Easter Ross and ourselves do help each other on all sorts of fetes and bits and pieces. And we're, what, 25 miles away from them. So it does work, and it builds friendships between the clubs. But I'm not sure that we could go to the stage of having specific skills that we advertise that we can help too many others. But we do it between other organisations within the Sutherland community.
Yeah, and that's a great idea, because, and I know other clubs have done that, where they've invited all the community groups in and said, go and share your wares in the town hall. And Rotary's obviously done the same.
During the virus, I'm trying to remember the word for it, but there's a committee in every community that looks at, is it resilience, I think it's called.
Yes.
And a number of our members are on the resilience committees in the different communities that we cover in Sutherland. And certainly through that, we get to know an awful lot of people and an awful lot of needs, and that network helps us immensely.
Okay. Thank you for that. I'm just going to go and share my screen again. When I was looking for things like this, I found a thing called Club Runner, and it was, if I can just share that, it was things about 100 ways to recruit new members. And I've just put the link to this into the chat box. So if you want to copy and paste it back out of that, excellent. But there's 100 things in here, from building the club website to create more fun, a money back guarantee, join a speakers bureau. Interestingly, we're now joined up with Toastmasters. And I was actually trying to find if we get somebody along from Toastmasters. Repeatedly invite somebody. Pass out the M&Ms. And for those that see, you actually find there's a jar of M&Ms behind me. And before I go on to that, I'm just going to stop sharing that. This is in the link to that site is actually in the chat box just now.
No, it's not.
But before we go on to next week, Gary, do you want to say something about how Eduardo's getting on, seeing as we've had that on for a couple of weeks?
Yes, much appreciated, Ken. And I suppose if we've been talking about a Rotary moment, this may well be one of mine. For those of you who've not been involved with this at all, one of our members, Eduardo, is actually walking 500 miles around Scotland to visit 23 NTS sites to highlight the issue of the NTS as it currently stands. He's on day 21 and has just come back into District 1010, having been in 1020 and 1230 over the last couple of weeks. The support he's had has been absolutely amazing. And for example, this weekend, his last club within 1020 was Cumbernauld and Kilsyth, who between them set up a hotel for him to stay in. And then when he came back into us, it was Alaba, who were the club supporting him in, I think Sunday, I think it was. And a number of them walked with him as well as giving local publicity. So really, really very positive. And so many thanks to those in 1010 over the next few days. And if I missed somebody, my apologies. But certainly Cooper, Kerry Muir, Montrose, Aboyne are all supporting over the next few days. That's absolutely terrific. So it is very, very much appreciated. Where we were looking for some help, and this would be a great, is that from this Friday, there's a few days of gaps, particularly in the Brecon area, the Kemney area, and the Inch area. And if there's anybody who can support with that, that'd be great. The clubs who have been involved with Eduardo have used create a lot of local publicity for himself and indeed themselves as well. And there's been quite a few TV and radio interviews. So overall, Rotary has come out of this very, very well, or I'd like to think it has. So if any of you in, as I said, the Brecon, Kemney or Inch areas can help, that'd be great. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Gary. So that's just about this, us for tonight. Next week, we've got a very special speaker coming on, a guy, Jason Brown. And those who've heard me speaking about the M&Ms, this is where I stole the idea from. Jason's a guy from Pennsylvania and is past president of the Downtown Rotary Club of State College, Pennsylvania. He's various interests in IT professional, entrepreneur, Rotarian. He's spoken at district conferences, and he even spoke this year at the International Assembly, where all the district governors went and listened to him. So I've got to thank him, because that's where I stole the M&M idea. Next week, it starts at the same time. It's the same link, but we're also inviting, it's a joint Scottish district thing next week. So all the other two Scottish districts will be joining us. So thank you all very much for joining us. We'll look forward to seeing you all next week, and enjoy your week. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Yes.